Everyone knows the legend of Dracula, the caped vampire, the castle in the mountains, the fear of sunlight. But what if I told you the real Dracula wasn't a vampire, didn't drink blood, and that his true story is far more terrifying than any legend? This is the story of Prince Vlad of Wallachia, the man who inspired the myth, the man they called the Impaler. To understand the monster, you must first understand the world that created him. In the 15th century, Vlad's homeland of Wallachia, a small Christian principality in modern-day Romania, was a bloody battleground, a buffer state trapped between two superpowers, the Kingdom of Hungary and the expanding, unstoppable Ottoman Empire. It was a world of constant betrayal and survival at any cost. This was the world that forged Vlad Dracula. As a young boy, he and his younger brother were sent as political hostages to the court of the Ottoman Sultan. For years he was a prisoner, forced to learn the language, the culture, and the brutal tactics of his greatest enemy. His captivity was a masterclass in power and cruelty. He witnessed the Sultan's absolute authority firsthand. He saw how fear could control not just individuals, but entire nations. He learned that in the game of empires, mercy was a luxury, and that a reputation for terror could be a more effective deterrent than any army. This was not a formal education, it was a brutal apprenticeship in the mechanics of fear, a lesson he would take back with him to his homeland. His return to Wallachia was not a happy homecoming. He found his father and older brother had been betrayed and brutally murdered by their own treacherous noblemen, the boyars. His brother was blinded with red-hot pokers and buried alive. This trauma, combined with the lessons of his captivity, forged a new code within him: absolute order, enforced by absolute terror. When he finally seized the throne, his first act was to invite hundreds of these disloyal boyars to a feast. In the middle of the banquet, he had them all arrested. According to the legends, he had the older ones impaled on stakes outside his castle, and the younger ones were forced into slave labor, building a new fortress. The message was sent. The age of betrayal was over. The age of Vlad had begun. This was the birth of his infamous code, impalement. To Vlad, this was not just a method of execution, it was a weapon of psychological warfare, a form of political theater designed to be as terrifying as possible. The slow, agonizing death of the victim served as a gruesome public warning to anyone who dared to defy him, whether they were a common thief, a corrupt nobleman, or a foreign invader. His internal war on crime and corruption was absolute. Legend tells of a golden cup he placed in the main square of his capital, filled with fresh water. Anyone could drink from it, but no one dared to steal it. During his entire reign, the priceless cup remained untouched. It was the ultimate symbol of his code, a society so terrified of the punishment that the very thought of committing a crime became impossible. He had created a state of perfect, brutal order. His most legendary act of terror came when two Ottoman envoys refused to remove their turbans in his presence, citing religious custom. Vlad, praising their devotion, ordered their turbans to be nailed to their heads. He wasn't just a ruler, he was an architect of fear. This code of terror was put to the ultimate test when the mighty Ottoman Sultan, Mehmed the Conqueror, the man who had conquered Constantinople, launched a massive invasion to crush Wallachia once and for all. Vlad, with his tiny army, was hopelessly outmatched. He couldn't win a conventional battle, so he waged a war of nightmares. He used scorched earth tactics, burning his own villages and poisoning lulls to deny the Ottoman army food and water. He launched terrifying night raids, with his men disguised as Turks, spreading chaos and paranoia within the enemy camp. In one of his most audacious moves, Vlad himself disguised his own small cavalry force as Ottoman soldiers and rode directly into the Sultan's main camp in the dead of night. His objective? To assassinate the Sultan himself. He created chaos, cutting down soldiers in their tents and setting fires before slipping away into the darkness. While he failed to kill the Sultan, the psychological impact was immense. The Ottoman army realized their enemy was not just a prince, he was a phantom who could strike anywhere at any time, even in the heart of their own camp. But his masterpiece of terror awaited the Sultan himself. As Mehmed's army advanced on the Wallachian capital, they entered a valley. And there, stretching for miles, was Vlad's forest of the Impaled. An estimated 20,000 captured Turkish soldiers and prisoners, impaled on a forest of tall, sharp stakes, were left to rot in the sun. The sight and stench were so horrific, so psychologically devastating, that even the battle-hardened Ottoman army was broken. The Sultan, a man who had conquered empires, reportedly looked upon the scene and declared he could not win against a man who did such things. He turned his army around and retreated. Vlad hadn't defeated the Ottoman army. He had defeated the Ottoman mind. In the end, his brutal tactics could not save him forever. He was eventually betrayed and killed in battle. But his legacy was twofold. In Romania, he is remembered as a brutal but effective national hero, a fierce defender of his homeland against a vastly superior force. But in the West, the stories of his cruelty, combined with his family name Dracula, meaning son of the dragon, spread like wildfire. These tales of a dark prince from a land of mountains and superstition were collected and passed down through pamphlets printed in Germany and Russia, painting him as a bloodthirsty monster. 400 years later, in 1897, an Irish author named Bram Stoker, while researching Eastern European folklore, stumbled upon these tales. He masterfully fused the real-life terror of the historical Vlad the Impaler with the local myths of the undead, the Nosferatu. He borrowed Vlad's name, Dracula, his homeland, and his reputation for monstrous cruelty, and from this, he created the single most famous monster in literary history, Count Dracula, the aristocratic vampire. That fictional creation would take on a life of its own, becoming the blueprint for every vampire that came after, from the silent, terrifying monster of the film Nosferatu to the suave, charismatic portrayal by Bela Lugosi, all the way down to the modern vampires we see in movies and television today. They all carry the DNA of Bram Stoker's creation. And Stoker's creation, in turn, carries the dark historical echo of a real-life prince who was so terrifying his name became synonymous with horror itself. The legend of the vampire is fiction, but the code of terror that inspired it was very, very real. And that is the architecture of the terror of Vlad the Impaler. Remember, history is more than a story. It's a code. And there is always another layer to decrypt. Subscribe and continue the investigation with us.